Slightly different setting than usual because I filmed this video after consuming the food, and now I'm too full to move. So this recipe is it's a baked salmon with wild foraged leeks, and that's on top of some turnips with dill and butter and a special ingredient. So I hope you enjoy. So this recipe isn't exactly one that I've seen anywhere. It's sort of to me playing with things that I know that the Vikings had access to, and some things that I know are very favorites. And in the springtime, especially, a favorite among the Vikings and a lot of other cultures, including the French. Leeks. Leeks are a very good spring food. This particular type is known as a ramp, and they're actually, I believe it's actually illegal to harvest these in the province of Quebec because they are so treasured, basically. So many people buy them and everything that it's illegal to harvest them because there aren't any, because they've been sort of eaten out of existence. So they've been eaten into being a endangered species. But here in Ontario, perfectly legal and very tasty. The next is turnips. Actually, for the leeks, you need about 6 that are sort of finger thick. Turnips. And turnips are a staple of pre-North American colonization Europe. Turnips are sort of the food because they're kind of like a potato. You can keep them all year, or at least over the winter, if you sort of keep them properly. The next is a big favorite herb, and that is dill. There's lots of evidence archaeologically that the Vikings used dill quite a bit. And then for the protein source, salmon. Again, being next to the sea, and with all these fjords and rivers and everything, salmon was a very accessible food. And then the cheese that I'm adding here, it's actually a very Dutch thing. It's Spiced Gouda. And I know that's not exactly period authentic, but it's going to be the secret ingredient in this for now. So, I guess we'll get started. So the first thing you want to do is prepare the fish to be consumed. And what I'm going to do is use the meat side of the cutting board. And the first thing I want to do is rinse the fish to get rid of any slime or anything that's on it. And I rinse it in cold water. Now I want to divide it into the portions, and I want to keep it sort of even. So I'll cut it this way into 2 nice thick fillets. Cutting through that tough skin. It's a little bit of a chore sometimes. So now you have 2 nice pieces of fish. And then you want to put that in an oven-safe dish. I like to use my cast iron skillet for that, so that it keeps the heat in very nicely. So you want to, if you're using the same knife, you want to wash it off so that you don't get the basic kitchen safety. So now you want to cut your leeks, and you want to wash these really well to get all the dirt off you can and as much of the sand and stuff out of it as you can, because nothing's worse than eating kind of a gritty mess in your mouth. Forgot to mention that you'll want to preheat the oven to 375 preferably before you start this, and then it'll be hot by the time you're ready to put it in. So, after cleaning the ramps, you want to cut the end off, and then just slice similar to what you would do a green onion. All the way up until it changes from being white to being red, and then you'd want to discard the leaves. I don't believe the leaves are toxic or anything, but they don't have the same flavor characteristic. And the flavor of these ramps, they're very much like a combination of garlic and onion. And so much so that a guy that I used to work with, in the springtime, he would never bring his lunch to work. And that's because he would just go off in the woods and he'd find a bunch of leeks and stuff and eat that because it was all available to him. And the only downside was that nobody would go near him for the rest of the day because his breath would smell so bad. And it's kind of a side effect, I guess, of existing for at least one meal a day for a few weeks while these are still sort of in season. It's that your breath starts to smell really bad because of it, and you start to sweat the smell of it as well. So once these are cut, you want to just set them all around on top of the fish, so that the flavor of the leeks as it's cooking and all the juices from it end up sort of absorbing into the fish. And another thing that can kind of add to the ingredients list a little bit that I forgot earlier is just salt and pepper. But it's one of those things that pretty much everybody has, so it's not going to be too much of a chore to get. I actually have a little bit left over from another dish that I was making in the mortar and pestle. It's sort of a mix of salt and pepper that I ground up. So I just sprinkle some on, sort of just to taste sort of what you think will be good. So then when the oven's preheated, you just add that. You just put it in, and you're going to cook it for about 30 minutes at 375, or until the fish flakes easily with a fork. And the smaller, I believe, the smaller the flake, the more well cooked it is. So, yep, I'm going to wait for the oven to preheat because I forgot to do it beforehand. So now that the fish is in the oven, it's time to start preparing the turnips. So I like to cut off as much of the outer stuff as possible, partially because it's oxidized, partially because sometimes they treat the outsides of these things with wax to make them look shiny or whatever, make them look more appealing, even though they are appealing as is. And I mean, I probably should be going to, if I'm so worried about wax and stuff, I probably should be going to a organic grocery store or a farmer's market or something, but this was sort of a last minute idea. And organic grocery stores tend to be on the pricey side. So it's basically just peeling and cutting. And then once you have it peeled, you chop it into maybe quarters, and then cook it as you would to just mash them. So I'm going to skip ahead on time lapse because nobody needs to watch me cut a bunch of turnips. So once you have turnips chopped, you put them in the pot with some warm water, add some salt, and turn it on to boil. I'm going to show you the next step right now, only because the extra counter space that I'm using is sort of the stove. So it's kind of counterintuitive to, turn the stove on when I have a piece of wood over top. So with the dill, you're actually going to chop up the dill and mix it in with the turnips once they're being mashed, and that'll add sort of a bright flavor to it. And you want to pick some dill that looks very thick and lush and everything, and when you kind of rub your hands through it, it smells like pickles. Well, dill pickles anyway. And so that it's a very thick, flavorful thing. So you basically just chop it like you would any other herb. Try to get it fairly fine. And I'd imagine you don't want to get too much in volume. Sort of less is more, but I would say sort of use your judgment for the amount of turnip you're making. I think I'm probably good with this amount. And it's just sort of chopping it up as finely as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's going into a mash anyway. I think that's about fine enough. Now for the cheese. The cheese is actually just going to be mixed in with the warm turnip mash. And so just fairly thin slices, and in the case of this one you have to cut the ends off so that you don't get the wax residue and stuff in it. And I think just 3 thin slices of this cheese is going to be perfect. And that'll add sort of not only will it add the cheesy flavor, but it'll also add a bit of the spice from the caraway seed, which is pretty great. So now what I'm going to do is just take the board off the thing and cook up the turnips. I'm being kind of forgetful today. The other thing you're going to need, butter. Doesn't really matter whether it's salted or unsalted or fresh made or whatever. Just sort of your taste or what you can get. And it's just for basically making the mashed turnip a little more creamy. So whatever you like for that purpose. So once your turnips are done cooking, drain them and mash them. Then add your butter, your dill, and your cheese. And maybe salt and pepper if you wish. I'm going to do that because a little bit of pepper adds a bit of dynamic flavor. And then you mash it again. So there you have the dill turnip. Next time I think I'll add a little less butter. Ended up just a little bit soupy, but that's okay. So I'll let this cool just a little bit and wait for the fish to come out. And then I will plate it up. So the salmon came out looking very nice. I only wish you guys could smell this because it smells great. Can't wait for YouTube to come out with smell-o-vision. Get on that, Google. So to plate it up, I'll have to move the tripod here for a sec. So plate it up. You just take. If you're at an event, doesn't really matter what it looks like. It's just it's food. But if you want it to look nice at home or if you're making it for someone, this is a good thing to do. You just take one nice big serving of your turnip and just lay it down on the bottom, something like that. Sort of an appealing shape. The contrasting colors of the green and white look really nice. Then you take your salmon, you lay it on top, but you need to take a spatula. You sort of work it underneath the edge, making sure that the skin stays attached to the frying pan or whatever, and then you lay it right on top of the mash. A nice smooth way. And sort of just anything that falls on the outside you can kind of wipe off or whatever. Just keep the plate nice and clean. Then as a piece of garnish, you just add a nice piece of the dill right on top. And there you have it. My plate's not going to look quite as nice as this, but that'll be perfectly right for me. So, thank you for watching. If you make this recipe, I hope you enjoy it. I know I certainly will. And if you like what you see, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. If you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to comment below. Thank you very much. Also, it wouldn't hurt to pair this wonderful dish with a nice mead or cider in true Viking style, or I think it would go pretty well with a nice white wine. Shitty lighting, because final thought, if you don't like the alcoholic beverages, go to IKEA, get lemon juice.